Imagine sneaking into a bank, grabbing the loot, and then, halfway through your master plan, tripping over your own shoelaces, calling the cops on yourself, or getting busted because you critically forgot step one. Turn off your phone notifications. Crazy? You'd be surprised how many robberies in history turned out not dramatic but downright hilarious, not because they succeeded, but because the criminals were spectacularly bad at the job. Today, I'm going to walk you through some of the funniest, most absurd robberies ever recorded, real-life blunders that are equal parts facepalm and comedy gold. But there's a catch. I'm not just going to throw you a list. We're diving deep. Each story builds tension, unspools slowly, teases a payoff, then delivers with a twist that will make you shake your head, laugh, and maybe gasp. So sit tight, because things are about to get weird. Let's start small, with ordinary burglars whose plans went off the rails in delightfully absurd ways. Take the story of a burglar who decided to rob his own mother's house. Yes, his own mother. He believed that since it was daytime, it couldn't possibly count as burglary. In his twisted logic, it's not burglary if it happens during the day. Spoiler: it's burglary every time. The mother screamed, a neighbor called the police, and no surprise, he got arrested. According to accounts, he pleaded guilty and got slapped with a fine and a suspended sentence. Then there was the infamous pie burglar. A 62-year-old man in Baltimore broke into a fast food joint intending to rob it, but apparently had other priorities. Surveillance footage showed him eating 16 slices of pie, downing applesauce, drinking water, and then passing out right there on the floor. Yes, in a robbery where he presumably thought he'd terrorize someone, he ended up face down, stomach full, unconscious. Let that sink in. And that's just the beginning. There was the guy who logged into Facebook on his victim's computer mid-burglary, presumably because he just had to check his feed. The homeowner later found them logged in, which made it pretty easy for police to trace and arrest him. These first stories aren't flashy. They're not slick. They're just humans screwing up in the worst and funniest ways. Next, robberies where the criminals thought they had it all planned out and reality laughed right back. There was this bizarre heist in Michigan in 2019. The robber, a 37-year-old man named Robert Joseph Marcus, walked into a bank and made off with a whopping $106. Yes, six-figure, $106. The haul was so trivial it's almost comical. Naturally, he tried again a second time at a credit union. But somewhere between the first and second robbery, he remembered, maybe robbing banks isn't a great idea. He fled and was arrested within minutes. Then there's the idea of disguises and overconfidence. Imagine robbers thinking, if we wear a hat or maybe a wig, nobody will notice. That was the ill-fated logic behind a bungled bank robbery in Würzburg, Germany. The cops tracked them down, and not because of some high-tech forensics, because the disguises were just that bad. There was even a case where a robber submitted a withdrawal slip under his own real name, along with the stick-up note demanding cash. That's like publishing a self-incriminating ad. "Will rob you, here's my address and name." Unsurprisingly, that didn't end well. These stories share a pattern: a little arrogance, a huge miscalculation, and a complete failure to grasp that real crime is not like in the movies. Okay, enough with the amateurs. Let's talk about robberies that should have worked. Plans so audacious they read like scripts for crime thrillers, only to collapse under the weight of their own absurdity. One standout: the so-called Santa Claus bank robbery. On the 23rd of December 1927, in Cisco, Texas, a man dressed as Santa, yes, jolly, bearded, and festive, walked into a bank, blended in with the holiday crowd, and robbed over $12,200 in cash and $150,000 in securities. Imagine the scene: kids tugging Santa's beard, moms distracted checking their wallets, and a robber casually slipping away with vault keys. Bold? Absolutely. Effective? For a moment, yes. But also utterly ridiculous. Then there were more elaborate attempts: underground tunnels, secret entries, even cross-dressing and disguises inspired by movies. Some robbers rented fake storefronts nearby, dug tunnels under city blocks, and tried to sneak into bank vaults only for their entire plan to unravel because they misjudged noise, alarms, or the layout. One article listing the most ridiculous bank robberies in human history calls these kind of schemes heists that lean more toward the realm of the ridiculous, and it's hard not to laugh when you read just how far some people went. In theory, these could have worked. In reality, they collapsed under the weight of their own hubris and oversights. Now, here's where it gets even weirder: stories that actually make you pause, laugh, then wonder how on earth anyone thought they'd get away with it. There was one blatant attempted heist where, get this, the robber forgot to mask his face, then walked up, pulled out a note demanding money, and handed it over with his real name. Like some unbelievably incompetent bank customer who misread the memo. Naturally, the teller called the police. Another robber tried to make a getaway with stolen loot, but when authorities showed up, he panicked. Instead of running, he got stuck in a car full of stolen goods. It was like a kid who tries to run away from chores but hides under his school table. He was arrested within minutes. Some robbers don't even make it out of the parking lot before their life of crime ends. Then there was a case where thieves stole a fridge from a home, literally a refrigerator, and tried to haul it away. Why? Maybe they thought it was full of valuables? The police arrived. The getaway driver turned out to be a cop. And that was the end of that brilliant plan. It's astounding. In some of these robberies, the criminals were their own worst enemies. Not cunning, not clever, just catastrophically misguided. Okay, we've laughed, we've sighed, we've maybe cringed, but there's a reason stories like these endure. They reveal something essential about human nature, desperation, and sometimes just plain stupidity. Hubris kills or arrests. Overconfidence, belief that one is smarter than the system, often leads to the most ridiculous failures. Every time a robber assumed they could outsmart banks with flimsy disguises or absurd logic, they failed spectacularly. Real life isn't a movie. Hollywood's heists are neat, stylish, and most importantly, well-planned. Real robberies rarely are. Noise, alarms, human unpredictability, panic, these are variables you can't fully control. Desperation sows comedy. Many of these robberies weren't driven by greed alone. Sometimes fear, poverty, or poor judgment push people toward crime. And just as often, poor planning pushes them into hilarity. Morality plays into the absurd. Sometimes these criminals posed as saviors, Santa Claus. Other times they were petty thieves eating pie. Either way, their human flaws, weakness, gluttony, arrogance turned them into laughable cautionary tales. These stories stick with us because they're living proof. Crime doesn't make you clever. Often, it just makes you look ridiculous. Not every robbery that goes wrong is because the robber messed up his pants instead of planning. Some had almost everything right. They had ambition, creativity, boldness, yet a tiny miscalculation, a hunch gone wrong, or just bad luck ruined it. For example, in 2019, Robert Joseph Marcus robbed a bank and got away with $106. Then went on to try again, a hilarious example of ambition utterly divorced from reality. Or consider the bank robbers who rented out rundown storefronts, spent months digging tunnels under city blocks, and plotted elaborate vault break-ins. On paper, brilliant. Like something out of a caper film. In practice, the plan fell apart because they misjudged subterranean structural noise, alarm sensitivity, or tunnel collapse. There was also a case of a thief who forcibly recruited his own coworker to help hijack an armored car nearly perfect. They walked away with millions. But because of greed and betrayal, the heist fell apart and the entire operation unraveled. These near successes remind us, sometimes reality doesn't cooperate, and sometimes the final twist is just bad luck or human error. Before we go on, quick reality check. While many of these robberies are laughable, they still often left victims traumatized, banks shuttered, and innocent people shaken. A funny robbery doesn't erase the fact that lives were affected, even if sometimes it's the robbers who walked away embarrassed, arrested, or worse. One glaring point. Some of the more ridiculous robberies involved real thefts with real consequences: lost money, lost security, lost trust. Even the harmless ones, like the pie burglar or the Facebook logging burglar, ended with arrests and criminal records. That matters. So yes, we laugh at the absurdity, but we shouldn't romanticize it. Behind every ridiculous robbery is a human story, often tragic, sometimes stupid, but always real. As we wrap up, let's zoom out for a second. What these stories share, the good, the bad, the absurd, is a few universal truths. Plans without logic fail, disguises without detail, arrogance without caution, desperation without strategy. That's a recipe for disaster. Real life is messy. Security alarms, nervous tellers, unexpected witnesses, they kill plans faster than any Hollywood script can predict. Humans are flawed, and sometimes those flaws don't make for drama, they make for comedy. But behind comedy, there's gravity. There's always a victim. There's always loss, fear, and in many cases, real damage. So the next time you watch a heist movie and laugh at the chutzpah, remember, reality doesn't wait for a script. It laughs last. Robberies, especially the world's dumbest, strangest, or downright hilarious, are more than punchlines. They're mirror images of desperation, hubris, and human error. They remind us, when you think you're smarter than everyone, or smarter than the bank, reality has a way of humbling you. If today's journey taught us anything, it's this. Crime doesn't make you clever, but stupidity? Stupidity is timeless. And if you ever find yourself donning a Santa suit or sneaking into a bank thinking this will be easy, maybe, just maybe, don't, because the world doesn't need your kind of comedy.